For some reason, the video of my teaching with a group from Bangladesh did not record this morning, so I'll just have to do it this way. We were doing Matthew 7, verses 1 through 6, which is the passage where Jesus says not to judge others. We read the passage together, and then these were the things I had to say. Once again, as in other places, you can see that what Jesus is talking about is hypocrisy. That's his point. The point is that we should not be critical people who are always finding fault in others. That's a hypocritical way to act. Now, when he says don't judge others or you too will be judged, he's not saying that we shouldn't evaluate right and wrong. We are expected to continue to evaluate right and wrong. We are expected to assess what is wise and what is foolish. We are expected to see what is wrong in other people and help them find the right path. Galatians 6:1 talks about that very clearly. We are expected to see the mistakes people make and to counsel them towards righteousness and wisdom. Jesus did that in John chapter 8. But what we're not supposed to be, what we're not supposed to do is always be the person who tears down other people with criticism, seeing all their faults and never seeing any of our own faults. See, when we evaluate others, it should be out of compassion and concern, not because we are critical people with a critical spirit who is always tearing down other people. That's what Jesus is talking about, because that's hypocrisy. See, he did not mean that we are not to form opinions of others or that we should not condemn what we know to be wrong. We should. He is forbidding them to be nasty people while they are doing it or to delight in criticizing others. When you see how Jesus acted when he was in the presence of sinners, see, he was never nasty about it. Sometimes he told the truth very confidently and assertively, but he was never nasty, and it doesn't give him pleasure to criticize other people. What Jesus is condemning is the spirit of fault finding. If we judge others, we will be judged by others, and we will be judged by God. But that doesn't mean we're supposed to become indifferent to evil. That's not what Jesus is talking about. So Jesus is not referring here to legitimate discussions about right and wrong, or to helping correct other people's wrong or evil behavior. What he is condemning is finding fault in others based on our own sense of pride or prejudice or meanness. He's teaching that if we act out of pride, prejudice, or meanness, that kind of behavior and that kind of talk will come back to bite you, because your pride and your meanness will be perceived, and you too then will be weighed in the balances and found wanting. None of us is perfect, so if we judge others, people will see our faults too. See, generally, people are really lousy at seeing how they have been hurtful to other people. They're much better at seeing how hurtful people have been to them. Or when they accuse other people, you said that way, you were hurtful to me. Sometimes it's really because you have said something that's hurtful and you project that attitude onto them so you can accuse them rather than face up to your own attitudes and behavior. I mean, we as human beings are very, very tricky that way. Certainly there are times when it's appropriate to criticize someone else. Jesus' teaching, though, is that we're not to be judgmental hypocrites. See, the root, then Jesus says, this sort of sums it up. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Generally speaking, people will treat you for what kind of person you are. If you're mean, people will be mean to you. Generally, if you're caring, people will show care back to you. Generally, if you show respect for others, they will respect you in return. Generally speaking, a forgiving person is more likely to be forgiven by others. I mean, we all know how this works. In a conflict, if you come out yelling and accusing, your opponent will generally start yelling and accusing in return. That's how it works. And if you speak calmly, you have a greater chance of a calm response. And if someone swings a fist, the other person is going to swing a fist in return and attack back. That's the way things generally work. Now, Jesus is not saying this is a promise. Instead, it's a rule of thumb. Life generally works this way. And what Jesus is saying is because that's the way people's hearts work. But sometimes, as we know, even in the best of motives and actions, though, some people simply will not respond well to constructive criticism. Some people, no matter what you do and say, will refuse to listen and refuse to change. And that's why Paul says, as much as it depends on you, live at peace with other people. You can control what comes from you, or you should control what comes from you. But you can't always change hard-hearted, bad people. So then I said, what comments and questions do you have? And there was a man who spoke for a long time in response. And what he said is he liked to hear all the things that were being taught today. Many of these things are brand new to him and the others because they used to be Hindu. And they didn't know anything about these teachings of Jesus. And he said, we are seeing how to live in Christ. And he said they're trying their best to live out these truths, to change their lives, to live the way that Jesus is teaching them to live, and to give their lives fully to God. And they're convinced this is the right way to live. So I encourage them. That was so excellent to hear. It's the kind of response that the Bible wants us to make. And then there was another man who made a comment that he was saying, I don't blame others, but if someone blames me, if someone criticizes me, we should accept that and not be harsh against them. And the way I responded in return is that, yes, we need to be of the kind of heart where we can accept criticism just as readily as we are able to give criticism. Assuming that criticism is rightful and truthful and honestly given, and not just people being fault-finding in our direction. That's where we have to be discerning. So that's what I studied with them this morning. Sorry it somehow didn't get recorded, but hopefully this is a benefit to anyone who's watching.